The full-length videos are back, so why don't we do a classic old mock draft? This one has my own draft order with a bold Super Bowl prediction, but we're talking about the prospects here, so let's dive in. If you're new, subscribe to the channel as I'm doing draft content all year long. But for now, I'm Chase Keller, and welcome to 2025 NFL Mock Draft 3.0. Enjoy. In my opinion, the New England Patriots have the worst roster in the entire NFL. But they just selected a quarterback in Drake May, so we won't see a first-round signal caller. Besides, this QB class is pretty weak. So when we look at team needs here, a couple guys do stand out, but why don't we take a guy who can line up alongside Christian Gonzalez and create a lockdown secondary? So my number one pick here is Michigan corner Will Johnson, who is the consensus number 2 behind Colorado's Travis Hunter. The New York Giants picked 2nd overall here, and Giants fans are scared of another Daniel Jones season, and all other teams aren't scared at all. On a serious note though, the Giants do have a couple positional needs that can be addressed, but it's all going to come down to the play of Jones. If he plays well, he'll stay a starter. If he doesn't, it might be time for a new quarterback in New York, and that's what I think will happen. Which is why Georgia quarterback Carson Beck is the pick here, giving New York new hope. Moving on to the Washington Commanders, where Josh Harris says this team isn't in a rebuild, and the rest of us say that's bullshit. This roster is not talented enough to compete for a playoff spot, and with a rookie quarterback at the helm, it might be ugly this year. So after Daniel's first season, your first priority is to surround him with a tolerable offensive line, not with whatever you have now. So take a potential franchise left tackle in LSU's Will Campbell. The Minnesota Vikings are another team with a quarterback who is trying to prove himself, and he hasn't proven himself yet. This time, it's the 3rd separate starting opportunity for Sam Darnold, and if Darnold doesn't pan out this year, the Vikings also selected a first-round quarterback in the 2024 draft. So with that out of the picture, it's time to focus on something else. And I have a great idea. That idea is taking the 2nd Michigan player so far in this mock. The player I am taking is their stud defensive tackle, Mason Graham. Now on to 5th overall, where the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young should take a step forward because of just quarterback development. If they're bad enough to receive the 1st overall pick, maybe it is time to get rid of BY. But I think he'll be good this season, at least better than he was last year. In fact, I'm going to close in on the defensive side of the ball, where despite having a good defensive coordinator, the team finished 4th to last in points allowed. The trend upwards can start by taking Tennessee edge rusher James Pierce Jr., the replacement for Brian Burns. Then the Denver Broncos are up, the 4th team here that has selected a first-round quarterback in 2024. And while this QB class is weak, it takes away the opportunities for these prospect quarterbacks to be selected early on. But instead of taking a signal caller here, they take a player who can surround that signal caller and make him better. The target here is Mizzou wide receiver Luther Burden. Arizona wideout Tetairoa McMillan is also a possibility, but I think Burden's versatility will catch Sean Payton's eye. And now we have a QB likely team as we discuss the 6th overall pick's division rival, the Las Vegas Raiders. Quarterback is a whole, but so is cornerback, right tackle, linebacker, and more. So who do they take then? It's a tough decision for Vegas as they haven't had a successful team really since the Derek Carr regime, which hasn't been that long ago, but still, my point stands. And fixing what left is going to be that first priority. That is why they go quarterback and take Colorado's Shedeur Sanders at 7th overall. The Arizona Cardinals are picking 8th overall, and while they do have upside to be a playoff team in my opinion, I'm just not confident in their defense. They don't have one defensive position that I am confident in going into the season, and that includes the safeties, as Budda Baker isn't as good as he used to be. So it's pretty safe to say that they take defense here. Now it's just a matter of who's available, who do they need. Pretty much just take the best. They can even fill in another hole at the wide receiver position, so Colorado utility player Travis Hunter is perfect here. Should be an immediate starter in the secondary and a rotational player in the wide receiver room. The New Orleans Saints are coming up now, as they can also take a quarterback and move on from Derek Carr. But with Carr as their signal caller, they will never be a bottom tier team. They might always be in mediocrity, but that doesn't mean they're going to be terrible. I am just kidding there, but I do see them waiting until 2026 to grab their franchise guy, and they just stick with Carr or even a different option until then. But they can start their build up for that franchise guy now and take Kelvin Banks Jr., offensive tackle out of Texas. Rounding out the top 10 are the Seattle Seahawks, who have also been picking 10 throughout the rest of the mock drafts as well. And in my 2 previous mock drafts, I've also had them taking the same player. Same player, same pick. What a wild concept, right? I'll stop being annoying. It's going to be Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison once again at number 10. What might be an intriguing selection though, is who the Tennessee Titans take at pick 11. I can say that because while I can unsurprisingly narrow down the position that they take, it's the player that they take that could be shocking. That's only because this edge rusher class is stacked, and a guy who I don't even have getting drafted in this mock draft could go here as well. But the guy I do have going here is Penn State edge rusher Abdul Carter, who showed out in his first game at his new position. Next up are the Jacksonville Jaguars, who don't have a lot of positional needs when you look at their roster. They're so low on this list because I'm just not confident in Trevor Lawrence anymore. I may have thought he could have taken a step forwards going into 2023. I predicted he would be top 10, but he took a step back. But they just signed him to a huge extension, and yes, while I think it was an overpay, it shows what direction they're going to go in. So let's go secondary here and take Georgia safety Malachi Starks at number 12. The Indianapolis Colts are on the clock now with a team that has a lot of upside, but really only because of Anthony Richardson. This team has a lot of holes to fill, and even if Richardson stays healthy, I don't see this team being playoff caliber. But I also see him being the team's signal caller next year, and if you want him to improve, you gotta improve his surroundings. Michigan's tight end Colston Loveland is far and wide the tight end one in this class right now, and with the Colts needing tight end, he's right there. I originally had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning their division, but after Atlanta made a couple defensive transactions, I have them winning it now. So Tampa falls to 14th overall, but honestly, this is not a bad place for them to be picking given their team needs. But then I look closer, and I see that they need corner pretty badly. So this might seem like a reach to some, but I have them taking Ohio State cornerback Denzel Burke at number 14. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a quarterback issue, but I can't go against the grit because Mike Tomlin is an underrated great head coach. He's very underappreciated, but unfortunately, I am going to have Pittsburgh getting their first losing season with Tomlin at the helm. But they still go 8-9 in my predictions, which is fine. I also think they will wait to take their new quarterback and fix that problem in 2026. As for 2025, they do what New Orleans did, and they surround that quarterback that they're going to be taking later on. So their pick here is Arizona wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. The Chicago Bears are expected to do well, but I do have to give them the rookie quarterback tax, and I have them going 9-8 next season, which is still a success. That's a massive improvement from seasons prior, so where do they go if they do improve? Well, I think they do have a gaping hole on that interior defensive line, and I'm not confident in anyone in that group to stand out. So they take that standout DT and take Georgia's Mykel Williams, who can also play a little bit of edge in that Chicago system. We are halfway through this mock as I talk about the Los Angeles Chargers, who I think are being underrated. Sure, the defense and Herbert's surroundings aren't favorable, but we're talking about a top 10 quarterback here. The Chargers really only sucked last season because they lost him. But yeah, the surroundings do kind of suck. Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka might fix that. The Cleveland Browns pick 18th overall here, and while I do think they have a dominant defense, I do think there's a hole going in there. The depth of that defensive tackle group is elite, but I don't think they have a true number one defensive tackle, which is essential for them to keep up their great success on the defensive line. So in this mock draft, they take the giant Kentucky defensive tackle Deontay Walker with the 18th overall pick. I mentioned that the Atlanta Falcons originally weren't supposed to win the division, but with the couple defensive additions, they look better than they did a few weeks ago. But they added a couple old veterans to the defensive squad, and they should capitalize on that by drafting a young draftee to sit behind that veteran for a season and learn a lot. That young draftee is going to be an edge rusher, as with the 19th pick, I have Atlanta taking Texas A&M edge rusher Nick Scorton. The New York Jets wrap up the top 20 here, and I have had them going with Colston Loveland the past couple of mocks. But he's off the board now, and with no other tight end worth taking this high, they shift their focus over to the defensive side of the ball. They decide to pair another first-round defensive tackle with Quinnen Williams, adding Michigan's Kenneth Grant to form a very good defensive line. The Rams are coming off a season that surprised me, but with a very bad defensive group, they might miss the playoffs. But we're talking about Sean McVay here. Besides, I don't even have them taking a defender in the first round of this mock. They can use free agency to bolster the defense. So they center in on offensive tackle, and the best OT available is LSU's Emory Jones Jr., who is the pick here at 21. Moving on to 22nd overall, where the Bills have a roster that has the most questions on it since Josh Allen started dominating. And there's questions even about Allen here, as yes, he's a great quarterback, but he has the worst surround sound of his career, except for maybe his rookie season. So they used this draft to get another first round wideout, taking Oregon wide receiver Evan Stewart. The Bills' division rivals pick right after them, and luckily for the Miami Dolphins, they don't need a wide receiver nearly as bad as Buffalo does. So their guy is likely still on the board here, and kind of like New York, they have a top tier defensive tackle, but don't have another good one to pair with him. So they go with the Jets route and take a defensive tackle to pair up with Zach Sealer. That defensive tackle is Ohio State's Tyleik Williams. The Cowboys pick 24th overall here, and I have been loving their chances over the last couple months to get the number one running back in this class. But there's one running back that has elevated himself to number one status now after his 267-yard, 6-touchdown performance in the first week of college football. I'm talking about Boise State's Ashton Jeanty, who is a dark horse Heisman candidate after that fantastic start. And just like Buffalo to Miami, we go from division rival to division rival with the Philadelphia Eagles picking 25th here. I'm going to keep saying that they will eventually need offensive line reinforcement, and they can start that now because this O-line class is pretty decent. They decide to draft Lane Johnson's eventual replacement with this pick, and they take Ariante Ursary. I had to make sure I said that right. I love the name though, don't get me wrong. Anyways, the Cincinnati Bengals are picking 26th overall in this draft, and I have been all over the place with them in terms of their positional needs. What do they actually need? They don't have a surefire need right now outside of maybe running back, and I do think that Chase Brown will have a big year anyways. So they play it safe and they add to their cornerback room, taking Arizona corner Takario Davis. The potential for two straight cornerbacks comes up here with Green Bay picking 27th, as I just don't really like Eric Stokes as a starter. I understand the team liking him, but I just don't. Plus, Green Bay covered their other needs pretty well this offseason. So yes, 2 straight corners go off the board, and Oregon's Jabbar Muhammad is the pick here. I actually had Green Bay taking them in one of last year's mock drafts, but obviously he stayed in school. The Baltimore Ravens are coming off a huge season, but after losing a few key free agents, they might take a step back this season. But even if they don't, they still do have some visible holes here, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They can fix that by taking a multi-position athletic freak. That player is LSU linebacker Harold Perkins, who goes off the board here. The conference championship losers mark a new era of football, as while I'm not a huge fan of Brock Purdy, there's no denying that he is leading this team, and he's still really young. But I am beating a dead horse by continuing to say that the 49ers need offensive line help desperately. Trent Williams can't run the show himself by protecting Brock Purdy. You need 5 of them. So they solved this issue by taking Alabama positionless offensive lineman Tyler Booker at pick 29. CJ Stroud is going to be a top 5 quarterback this year, and the Houston Texans look to be a top 5 team along with that. I have them as number 2 in the AFC, and they don't have a lot of holes they need to fill. Honestly, they don't have any hole that they need to take this high. So they take a mild positional need and the best player at that position available and take Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolan, who returns to Texas. The Super Bowl runner-ups are the Kansas City Chiefs, as while I do think they are extremely talented, I just don't see them three-peating. But they truly don't have a lot of needs that they need to address in the first couple rounds of the draft. And yeah, they might still have the most talented roster, I just don't want them to three-peat, you know? Anyways, they could use another rotational edge rusher, which is why I have them taking Ohio State defensive lineman JT Tuimoloau with this pick. And my fun prediction this year is that the Detroit Lions are going to be the Super Bowl 59 champions. It's because their roster is fantastic all the way around, and honestly, they could trade out of the first round and still make it worth it. But I want to pair someone alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he can sit behind the veterans of him, Tim Patrick, and maybe Allen Robinson if he makes the team. With a huge year coming up for Stanford wideout Alik Ayamaner, don't be surprised if he goes off the board in the first round. He's my selection here. Well, that is my 3rd mock draft of the 2025 NFL draft season. Do you agree with my mock? What would you change? Let me know in the comments section below. Wait, are you not subscribed yet? Well, do it now. I release content like this all the time and would really appreciate your support. I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and I will see you all next time.